Yeah, so this is a little move away from the what has become the norm. It's not two and a mic, but just me and a mic on this occasion. So yeah, my apologies. You're going to have to get used to the monotony of my voice, but I'll keep it shorter than normal. In the course of my training sessions with students, whether that's language training or some other kind of funky or spontaneous training based upon an idea that has taken my fancy, um, I've always suggested that people should be reflective. We should look upon the efforts that we have undertaken to either achieve or implement some specific task, and thereafter we should evaluate and then re-evaluate and see where we stand, see where we could have improved things, make notes, if possible, archive those notes, compile some kind of a document which tells us what we have learned, and tells others how we have reached those decisions. Essentially, some kind of a conclusive document which can be used at the end of any kind of project to essentially advise successors or other people who undertake similar tasks, of the fruitfulness of certain activities, and at the same time the potential pitfalls of either those same activities or others. So now that I've done a few of these podcast episodes with some fantastic people, and I've got a number of equally fantastic people to planned with whom I intend to have some extremely fascinating conversations. I thought have a look at what I had done and whether or not it was working, and also listening to some of the opinions that people had. Um, there are there are only five up at the moment that are up, so yeah, this is perhaps a premature evaluation, but it's nice to put some thoughts out there, and perhaps if anybody listens to this, then they could contact me and let me know what they think about this. It's often said it's important to move forward. It's it's part of a process of feeling that you are either doing something, that you have managed to overcome something, that you are in some way dealing with something. Whether or not that reflects success, that's completely irrelevant at this point. So for me, it's not a question of success or achieving success, it's a question of having an idea, having developed the idea, and now pursuing the task of implementing the idea. And the idea from the outset was to say something, to communicate something, to share with people either my thoughts or indeed the thoughts of others, or the experiences of others, which I felt would be of service, of benefit, which would in some way assist the understanding, the development of understanding, the development of awareness of others, when certain situations are seen through the perspectives of other people. And that's essentially one of the main points behind why I wanted to undertake this. At the same time, another reason is on the basis of what I do, the way in which I do it, the people with whom I have the opportunity of doing my training sessions, my mainly language training sessions, but it's never really limited to grammar. It's always applied English with focus on situations which are developing at the time, either directly which reflect people's work or perhaps the society in which these job tasks are carried out. And so therefore there is always some practical assessment of where we are, a discussion of what is happening in society, how society is dealing with an issue, what are the main problems of the day. Are these problems things which affect only us or limited numbers of people? Are they universally applicable issues? Are there solutions to these issues which are also universally applicable? Or indeed, do we have to structure specific solutions for specific problems? And in engaging with different types of people with completely different job descriptions, who operate in completely different environments and with different skill sets and experience levels, it really does come to the fore how similar so many of the problems that we face are. I found that dialogue is a fantastic means of rectifying situations, of coming to agreement, of developing understanding, increasing awareness, as I've hinted at before. But it's only possible when people actually listen. And far, far too often, we don't use our ears enough. And I remember I was at the Leipzig Book Fair in 2019, and there was a female author, and she was talking about the need, especially nowadays, for empathy. That we really need to be able to focus on how other people feel, to be able to perceive almost automatically how and why they will feel in a certain way. And she suggested that the best way to achieve this, actually, to train ourselves in becoming more empathetic, was to read. Because by reading, we are naturally putting ourselves into the situation the author wants us to be, so that we can appreciate the development of this story, whatever the story may be, of course. And it was the first time that I had considered this perspective, and I thought it was phenomenal, and it's something which has stuck with me. And in developing my listening, shall we say, by listening to podcasts and audiobooks, I have attempted to do exactly that which this lady so wisely suggested. And I think these podcasts also give me especially an opportunity to exercise my listening capabilities, but also those others of you who do not partake specifically in the podcast, but who listen to the result of those dialogues. And I hope you continue to enjoy them, of course. But I did have quite a few things that I wanted to get off my chest when I began these podcasts. And I didn't, however, want to focus on the things that I wanted to get off my chest. I spoke with people, as I have suggested in the description of the podcast, who I've met along the way on the path of my life, which has allowed me to venture from there to here. And I have frequently crossed paths with extremely interesting people. And I wanted to see if those things which were difficult for me to accept were also issues for them. And then, of course, to see how they assessed perhaps the same issues, how they dealt with them, how they thought they may affect others. And so, taking the somewhat perhaps simpler subject matter of current affairs, putting them into specific ideological context, perhaps through ideological analyses, we were perhaps able to come out and come up with a statement or a thought process which other people would find interesting and which would perhaps be of some kind of benefit. I wanted people to tell their stories. I wanted to hear their experiences and grow with them. I wanted to learn and then develop. In the course of my work with lots of these students, I should call them, I have learned so much. I have learned a lot from every single person with whom I have interacted. Teaching for me is not a one-way street. It's definitely a process in which I understand from them, from the student, what the student needs. I then delve into whatever knowledge I may have in that area and then try to impart that knowledge. But it's not only this. You know, a student is a person with any number of complex requirements, developed experiences, awareness, knowledge that I want to learn about too. It's, you know, I don't only exist to tell people things. You know, I exist to learn from them, to hear what they have to say, to empathize, to understand, to embrace, you know, where such a possibility exists. And that's what I have done. And in the process of this, I have learned, you know, a lot. I've understood how communication between people, even today in the time of communication, still requires certain fundamental principles which are lacking, because some things can simply not be replicated by technology. It is not the role of an email to introduce courtesy. It is not the role of a WhatsApp message to introduce kindness and understanding. It is not the role of an SMS facility to communicate respect. These are elements of communication which we should introduce and which we cannot rely upon technologies to take care of for us. But that's only one element to, you know, to the many things that you know, we have learned, or I have learned, and I am continuing to learn from the people with whom I communicate. And what is fascinating is to know that there so many problems are quite similar, and you know, seeing where these differences come together, how some people have managed to find solutions to them, and then to share those solutions with others, to help others to reach the, I wouldn't say the promised land, but the goals that they had set for them. You know, we don't always have to struggle to learn. You know, sometimes learning something easily also allows us to learn. It doesn't always have to be difficult. And this is one issue which I truly believe, is that there are greater levels of frustration in society than we actually know. People are far more unhappy than we allow ourselves to acknowledge. It's not simply a question of people being angry. You know, if you see somebody, you know, at a train station beating up a coffee machine, it's not because the machine has swallowed 20 cents. I cannot imagine that that is the only reason that person has chosen to kick, elbow, and headbutt an inanimate object. There has to be something more. Anxiety, stress, depression. These are common factors in the world in which we live today. And under the current circumstances of corona, the temporary incidence that is corona, which amplifies these debilitating psychological conditions, needs to be addressed, perhaps in different ways, because there are consequences. So even though corona is a temporary situation, what comes after corona has not yet been analyzed enough, because there will be some kind of reckoning. People who for almost a year have lived in isolation, with restrictions that were not there by choice, thrown into situations where there was a lack of privacy, a lack of mobility, a lack of choice, liberty in some ways, some cases as well. And then, of course, the more extreme situations where people have been verbally or physically abused, where they have not felt their rights as a human being listened to and taken care of. Yeah, these are even more severe issues which will show themselves at far greater length after Corona has come and gone. So that tells me we have to do something. And one of the questions which for me at the moment remains unanswered is, where is the post-COVID planning? This is something which has sort of come up in one or two of the podcasts when I spoke with Annie, when I spoke with Alvaro, the role of society, that we shouldn't necessarily rely upon the government to take a lead in everything. We have to plan for the day we emerge from our homes. And that day of re-emergence is something which should be celebrated. It would suggest that we have managed to overcome another hurdle in the development and evolution of humanity. But there needs to be a plan in place, because everybody keeps telling us about, or a lot of people keep saying, Corona or COVID-19 is an opportunity for the economy, for social issues and for political issues to be reset. However, for that to happen, we need to engage. We need to do something. There has to be a kind of collective activity, a participatory program, which allows us to highlight the individual requirements of our communities and societies, because not everywhere is the same, and to come up with plans, to come up with remedies, to come up with actions and tasks which can be divided among the participant elements of each team, of each group, and then thereafter we can see what emerges. Communication has to be developed between households, between families, between individuals, so that we can really highlight that which is missing. And for this to occur, we really need to start thinking collectively. We have to formulate localized teams, and we have to give our communities the proactive goal of designing what comes next. This is not in any way a politically motivated suggestion. This isn't some kind of a game. I'm not trying to play politics. I'm trying to suggest that we as individuals have a role to play in the defining of our community. Political systems are mirages. We are lost wanderers in the desert. And I think sometimes we expect so much from these systems that they don't deliver. We expect them to deliver, but they don't. They themselves are not in a position to deliver, even if they promise that they will deliver. But they cannot. So we have to go to the natural stream, that watering hole, not the mirage. Feel the water flow through our fingers. Quench our thirst. But we have to realize that this is a spring which must be shared with our communities, with our fellow members of society. We have to be realistic. We have to be appreciative. We have to listen. And if there is any specific goal from these podcasts, it is to encourage people to listen. Thank you. Take care.